Hi, my name is Corbin Hunter, and I'm doing this tutorial for cgcookie.com. Today I'm going to show you how I create an environment painting. It's going to be a mystical, magical kind of forest. This is the first part of the tutorial, and there will be three parts. So we're going to look at how I block in the composition, colors, lighting, atmosphere, and all that beginning stuff of a painting. So let's get right to it.
So you can see I'm starting here with this warm kind of greeny yellowy tone. Uh, that's just for the sake of atmosphere and for the sake of having something down to work with. Because a blank canvas staring at you can be pretty intimidating sometimes. So I'm just using some pretty standard brushes right now, nothing fancy, and you don't need too much texture work or anything like that at this point. You just want to be blocking in the main shapes that you're going to be using throughout the rest of the painting. You can do this with thumbnail sketches, or you can do sketches in your sketchbook, or whatever you need to do to get a solid sense of where you're going with the piece. Sometimes wandering around in a haze, hoping things work themselves out can lead to good results, but not always. And so it's good to just have a plan kind of set. You kind of know where you're going and what you need to achieve, just for the sense of direction. So here I'm focusing on getting some good colors and stuff like that. I put a black layer over top of everything and set it to color so that I can see the values so that I don't get too carried away with the colors. And then this is a soft light layer to adjust some of the values within the painting to separate the foreground, the midground, and the background a little bit. That gives a good sense of depth and scale to the piece, which is pretty important when you're doing a big environment like this. I want to be conveying pretty massive trees in this big murky swamp by the end of the painting, so I need to make sure that I actually am accomplishing that by giving it good perspective, good depth, and all that fun stuff. Here I decided I need some foreground elements, and I end up putting a lot of vines throughout the rest of the piece as well. But for now, these just go on a new layer, and they just kind of hang out there for a bit. That's not what they end up looking like at the end of the painting, but at least it gives me kind of a general idea of where I'm going with it. Here, just some more fog in there to push those trees back in space a little bit. It's getting too contrasted here, and I'll fix that eventually, but not yet. So like I said, some pretty standard brushes, just kind of a chalky oil brush, and I'm also using a hard round brush and a bristly round brush. Those will be available in the download if you're a citizen. If not, you can just try to replicate these as best you can, or use your own brushes, whatever works. So you can see that throughout the painting and throughout this blocking stage, I'm really focused on defining the depth levels of the different trees. So the trees in the far background are faded out, and they've got a lot of fog in there, and all that good atmospheric perspective kind of stuff, so that the eye doesn't need to strain. You don't need to think about what's in front, what's behind, what goes where. Your brain just figures it out. Okay, so the actual concept for this is to have a bunch of giant trees ringing this kind of circular waterfall. So it's about time to get the water in there. And I gave it a bluer tone, to not because water is blue, because water is not blue, but because I wanted to separate it from the rest of the scene. I didn't want to get too monochromatic here. So the way I arrived at this composition was pretty straightforward. I pretty much knew what I wanted to achieve, and I did some sketches before starting this painting in Photoshop. Here I'm just giving a little bit of detail and some color to the tree. But I did some sketches and I thought about it, so I know where I'm going with it. and I know that I want it to have this kind of heavy, foggy, murky sort of uh, light permeated atmosphere. So to do that, I'm putting in a lot of fog and a lot of atmospheric perspective and very, very powerful golden lighting. Okay, so here I added some ground down there, and I'm also working on defining the forms of the trees and a little bit of cleaning up to do on the edges. I put a bunch of roots everywhere and a bunch of branches everywhere to suggest kind of subconsciously to the viewer's mind what it is that's going on here. You know, um, a lot of the time the overall impression is more important than the details. The details just build upon that overall impression. They just add to it, but the details are not what makes the piece per se. So you want to make sure that you're getting across the impacting kind of general feel that you want. That's the purpose of this beginning stage here. In the later videos, I'll go in and put in more details, and that will help flesh out the overall scale and give it a bit of a story. But for now, we need to focus on the colors and the mood and suggesting the details instead of actually adding them. Because if you go in with a textured brush or a custom brush or just zoom way in and do some details right now, you're going to lose those pretty quickly. Right now my canvas is 1600 pixels wide. That'll go way higher by the end of it, but for now I'm just staying zoomed out for the most part and working with some very vague brush strokes so that everything can be changed at a moment's notice. If I don't like something, I just go in and paint over it. You don't want to get too attached to anything at this stage. When I come back to it in section 2, I realized that the composition here isn't quite right, and I am warping it a bit and altering it a bit for some more impact. But the colors and the overall layout all stays the same. I don't end up destroying this work, I just tweak it a bit. So to get my colors in here, I'm using a lot of soft light layers and a lot of just normal brush strokes. Too much color dodge or too much overlay can give your scenes an unnatural monochromatic kind of feel, or they can blow out the tones, and so that's not cool. So as much as you can, you want to get your colors on the canvas and then just use the eyedropper tool to pick them and paint with those colors instead of using funky layer modes. So what I like to do is I like to I've got my whole painting set on that background layer there, you can see, and I make a new layer and I paint in a bunch of details and just kind of work away at it, and then like you saw there, I flip back and forth between them to make sure that I'm going in the direction that I need to be going, that I'm accomplishing what I want to accomplish. And then once I'm happy, I merge it down, make a new layer, and just keep painting. That way if I mess up, I can get rid of the whole layer and not have a problem. So here's where I go in and start adding one of the elements I was really excited about, which is some glowing lights. They end up being kind of windows in the trees to suggest that some people are living in here. Originally, I thought about doing some structures and some buildings on the trees, but it just didn't really fit, and it's a totally different sort of environment than what I had going on here. It's a different doing a village painting or a city painting is a totally different gear than doing just an environment painting like this. So I just stuck with windows. So I made these pinpricks of light, and then I went in over top on a color dodge layer with this kind of saturated orange, and I used that to give it the glow. Color dodge is great for giving anything an unnatural kind of glow, an artificial or electric sort of light. It's not good for doing your regular shading in a painting, but it's good for this kind of stuff. And I'm using the black and white layer here to double check that my tones are as light as they're supposed to be. Here I went in with a pretty spackly brush, a takeoff of one of Linda Bergqvist's, to give a little bit of texture, because I didn't just want them to be vague glows. I want them to look like they're showing the environment a little bit, showing the texture on the trees a little bit. So I end up painting over most of these lights and redoing them a couple times, but they were important to have in there so that I could kind of get a feel for what it would end up looking like. Here I'm using a custom tree brush or a forest brush to put in some foliage. I thought it was a little bit too empty, a little too open, and so I did that. You don't want to end up leaving it like that, though. You don't just want to give it a pass with a custom brush and call it a day. You want to always go in over top with a plainer brush or something that's less punchy, and make sure that you're giving it the love and care and the detail that it needs, or else it'll look too fake and too digital. So right there, I decided it was too monochromatic, and I went in with some brighter colors, setting those to low opacity to give a little bit of variance mostly in the shadows, because I just felt that it wasn't quite strong enough. It was too flat. Everything was green and gold and yellow and brown. So I wanted some variance there. So here I'm going in again with the foreground elements. I knew I wanted them in, but I painted over them. And even though I ended up removing them and putting them back in, which kind of seems like a step backwards, what I'm generally working towards is a higher level of detail and a better polish all around on the piece. So though I had to paint over them, and though I just went back in and repainted them, these vines are stronger and a little bit more interesting than the last ones. And later I'll end up altering them and tweaking them, and they'll get interesting still. But I'm just focusing on improving the overall picture all at once.
So the composition will change a little bit more in part 2. The front tree has to be a little bit fatter, and I'm going to give it more perspective, more fog. But overall, this is the composition and the setup that we're going to be sticking with. This color palette, this lighting, it's basically going to stay like this, and what's going to change is the details and the rendering, giving it a lot more love and trying to ramp up some cool details in there. So tune in to part 2 for that exciting adventure. This concludes part 1, which was blocking in your scene. And yeah, I hope you join us for part 2. Once again, my name's Corbin Hunter, and this has been a tutorial for cgcookie.com. Take care. Thanks for watching.